Hey, Lipsey Guns fans, it's Jason here, and hunting season's around the corner, and a lot of guys and girls are out there mounting new scopes, getting their guns tuned up for the upcoming hunting season. And one of the guys here at the office just got this brand new Seekins PH3 6.5 PRC and a new SIG scope, and he asked me to mount it up for him. I said, hey, you know what? If we're going to do all this, why don't I go ahead and just film it, show you how I do it. Now, the process I do, it's worked for me. It's a way. It's not necessarily the way. But I've used this process for several years, and I haven't had one come loose yet. So we're going to break it down, show you kind of how I do it. There's kind of a process, and get this gun up to speed. So let's check it out. The first thing we're going to do is make sure we have everything level. So I've got a couple levels. I've got a bubble level here. The table's all good. We got to make sure that the gun is level on here, which it is. Now, one of the tools that I use is one of these Wheeler leveling kits, and what you do is you slide this over your barrel and you're getting to tighten it up a little bit here, and what you're going to do is you're going to use this as a wet reference mark. So I've got this one here, so now that the gun is, the action is, I'm going to turn it, actually I'm going to put my cheaters on here, turning 50 get you. So I got the gun level here. So what I'm going to do, I can make gross movements of this to make sure this is level. And I can fine tune it with this little knob here. And so what I'm doing is I'm matching up both of these level bubbles. So I have a witness mark. So that way, if the gun twists or turns while we're doing this, I can reference this and get it back level again. So just kind of make sure everything's good, everything's level here. So we got this good, we're good here. Okay, the most important thing you can do, in my experience, on mounting scopes and actions and everything else is make sure everything is degreased. All these guns, all these mounts, all these screws are gonna come with oil on them from the factory, and you wanna get all that off of there. So what I do is I have a little kit of things that I kind of assemble. I've used this little ramekin here for a long time. I've got a little thing of rubbing alcohol as a degreasing unit, brake cleaner, whatever, something like that works fine. Always keep Q-tips handy to swab out the holes where the screws go. I've got my Loctite. I've got some Vibratite, that works well. Paint pen, you're gonna see where this comes in handy later. Torques, you definitely want a torque. The fat wrench is kind of the classic. Got one of those that I use. I also have a couple sets of these fix-it sticks. It comes with the torque wrench as well. Great kits. I've got kind of the bigger one, and I also have one of the ones that's just like the smaller that I keep in my pack when I go on a hunt. I've used this multiple times. These are a lifesaver. If you don't have a fix-it stick kit, get you one. You'll appreciate it later. Rubber gloves to keep your hand oils off. You're degreasing everything, getting oil off. You don't want to go put your hand oil back on it. So just kind of precautionary there. So the first thing I did was I took one of these rings apart, this Seekins rings that we're using on this rifle, and I've got the screws soaking in the rubbing alcohol. So what I'll do is I'll take those out, take a little shop rag, let me get my glove on here, and I'll take that out. This has been soaking in the alcohol, and I'll just rub all this off. And I'll keep these in a clean area. Now these aren't too bad, but they do have oil on them. Now some of the screws you might get might become preloaded with Loctite on them. So there you kind of have to be a little careful. You don't want to take your Loctite off. But if it does come off, you can always reapply it. So those top cap screws are degreased. They're good to go. There's the clamp screws. Pour a little bit more of this in there. It's good to have a nice clean work area when you're doing all this, because trust me, you will drop screws. If you're in a dark, carpeted area, you'll never find them. So make sure you got a nice clean area when you're doing this stuff, preferably well lit. And if you got like a magnetic type mat, it's a life changer. All right, the next step is I'm gonna take one of these Q-tips, I'm gonna dab it in my rubbing alcohol, and I'm gonna swab out the holes in these rings. I'm just trying to get all the grease I can get out of there, all the oil. Trying to keep everything from slipping as possible. And then what I'm going to do also is I'm going to degrease the inside of the rings, all the surfaces that have come in contact with the scope. I want to get all that out of there. The lugs underneath, they got oil on them, get it off. This goes in my clean area. I also degrease anything that the scope rings will come in contact with. So on this particular Seekins rifle, the base is integral to the receiver, which is nice because now you don't have to worry about Loctiting, bonding a base to your receiver. But make sure and degrease it. You want to get all that off there. Anywhere where the ring will come in contact. So this one's actually not too bad. I've seen some of them where the Q-tip's just black when you get done with it. And that means there's a lot of oil on there. All right, so as that's drying, I'm gonna do my top cap here. Degreasing everything, all the surfaces. Okay, so I got my top cap, got my bottom ring, and I got all my screws. Oh, don't forget your clamp. You want to get that good and degreased as well. Make sure you look up the proper torque settings for all this. Different ring manufacturers have different settings. I mean, you can default to there. Some ring manufacturers will recommend not using Loctite. It's up to you. I'll use it. I don't think it's a bad thing to have a little extra Loctite on the rings and bases, especially. I use a blue Loctite. You don't want to use the red on your ring caps. Now, if you were mounting a base on here and you were like, okay, this is the base and everything's square, you might want to do something a little bit more permanent, like a red Loctite. A lot of guys will bond their bases with even more of a permanent type sealant. That's up to you. There's plenty of ways to do that. But as far as rings and stuff like that, use a blue Loctite because it will at least break. Now, if you're mounting a new scope and you've got Loctite old Loctite on those screws, get that old Loctite off before you reapply the new Loctite. Just a little tip right there. So, okay. So now I've already kind of measured up kind of where this scope needs to be put on here. What we're going to do is I'm going to put this ring, go ahead and apply this ring where it goes. Now, one thing you want to do is make sure, obviously, that your rings are tall enough to clear your bolt handle. This Seekins has a real short bolt throw, so this was no problem here. And you want to make sure that, obviously, you cover your scope ejector. Make sure you're not hitting anything. So this was all pre-checked. When you're mounting your ring into your groove, you want to make sure if there's any bit of slop in that weaver, that Picatinny slot, you want to push that ring forward against. It wants to be resting against the forward lug, not the rear, because as the gun recoils backwards, the rings are going to want to naturally go forward. So if you're butted up forward, you'll be good. So that's just another little tip. Guess let's go ahead and put a little Loctite on this screw. I like this Loctite stick. It works. I've used it for years, and it seems to work pretty good. You want to make sure your Loctite is on the bottom half of your screws. That's really where it's going to count for you. So just put a little bit in there and kind of get it into the grooves a little bit. Work it in. Just getting it on here. Just snugging it up. We'll torque it to proper depth. Okay. Let's get another screw. Okay. So on these Seekins bottom clamp rings, it is 55 inch-pounds. So we're going to take our torque wrench and clamp these down. Another little pro tip: when you have one of these torque wrenches, these fat wrenches, don't store it torqued. You want to break it back down to 0 when you're done with it. Okay, so this one's on. It's good and solid. Everything's clean. We're going to repeat the process for the next ring. Okay, so we've got all of our rings, all our screws, our caps, and everything degreased. We got our mounts degreased. Check and make sure everything's still level. Our witness bubble is still good. Now, another little trick, and something I do, is I don't like to mount the rings too close to the turret. I like to keep them spread as far out as possible. So obviously you want maybe a little bit of a gap, but you want to keep these rings spaced out as far as possible. Now, that's a great thing about Picatinny style mounts. It gives you a lot more flexibility, especially now with scopes. It seems like they keep getting shorter and the mounting areas get tighter. So on long action guns, it can be a little difficult. But if possible, try to space out these rings as much as you can. Now, one other thing that I like to do is I like to actually degrease the scope body as well. Believe it or not, it'll have residue of oil in there as well. So we just want to get that off. So I'm just kind of anywhere where the rings might contact the actual scope itself, why not take the time and just go ahead and get that cleaned up. A little bit of prep can go a long way in saving you out in the field. Reason why I go through all these steps is I've seen scopes come loose out in the field, and that's a very inopportune time for that to happen. I was on a hunt here recently out in Africa, and one of our guys had that happen to him, and could have cost him a really nice Inyala. Fortunately, it worked out, but it got kind of a little dicey there for a minute. Okay, so we've got the scope, the rear one on here. I'm mounting it at, pretty close to the edge here. So I'm going to measure out where my ring needs to go on this side to get that same spacing. So I see where it goes now. I'll go ahead and get this glove back on. I don't want to introduce any more oils than I have to. We've done all this work. Lock tight in place. Let's get another one on. Okay, we've got our rings. We've got them Loctited. We've got them properly torqued to the base. So now we've got everything still level. Now it's time to put the scope in here. So I've got the scope degreased. I've got my spacing the way I want it. If you notice, I went ahead and I took the turret cap off. And when I'm leveling the scope and the rings, I like to actually level off of the actual spindle or the without the cap, because the cap sometimes have little ridges in it. I'm not so 100% sure that cap is 100% level when it's screwed down. So I would rather do it on the actual scope itself. So we put it in here. My witness mark is still good. Okay, so that's showing level. So obviously you can spot check it. I mean, scope leveling is an art in its own self. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. And some scopes actually have leveling, electronic leveling inside it, which is really nice. But anyways, we've got where we want it. Now we're going to take our ring caps. I'm going to touch them over here on the edges. There. Okay, everything's good. I already checked for bolt clearance. We're all good there. So the next step is going to be to properly lock tight our top cap screws and install those. Now on this particular Seekins rings, they specify 20 inch-pounds of torque. So that's what we're gonna reset our fat wrench to. Now, you might want to check a little bit into, a lot of times these torque settings are for dry ring settings. When you introduce Loctite, that does increase a little bit of your pressure. So you might want to back off a little bit. I haven't had any issues by going to it, but you talk to some engineers and some guys out there who really want to nerd out on Loctite torque values. Sometimes they'll recommend to go a little bit lighter. So do your research, figure out what you want to do on it. I'm going to stick with 20 on here. Now I'm just getting it started. I'm not tightening it down yet. We'll wait and tighten down kind of in a crisscross pattern. Again, scope mounting is one of those things where you don't rush it. If you don't have the time to do it, then wait till you do, because the difference between doing it right and doing it in a hurry, or sometimes the difference between having no issues and then having major issues. If you're out on a range, hopefully, and not in the field, and you start seeing a gun that's otherwise shoots well, is otherwise been a known performer, and things start getting a little wonky, a lot of times it's because there's a screw loose. I've found over the years more than anything else. And you can definitely minimize that possibility if you take the time to prep and to properly fasten all your screws. The good thing is that if you're going to switch scopes around a lot, if you're kind of guy who's got a lot of rifles and is always playing musical scopes, spend the $150, $200 it takes to get all the right tools, and you'll come out way ahead. Okay, so I'm going to kind of spot check my ring spacing here. Looks like I'm pretty even. I'm going to go back to my my bubble level. See how we're looking. A little. All right, and I'm just going to start kind of in a crisscross pattern. Just slightly tweaking as I go. I'm not going all the way down. And on these torque wrenches, when you get to the proper torque, it'll click and it won't turn anymore. So that's probably been the problem with most scope issues over the years, is people over torquing. You know, the old farmer tight is usually doesn't work too well with scopes. Okay. I'm double checking, make sure everything's clicked. Okay, we're good. Let's give it another check. Make sure everything's level. Yeah, we're good. Okay. Everything's moving tight. Sometimes if your rings are well over tightened, your power selector can be tight. Things are binding. So those are just things you can check. Bolt throw's good. This one's got a big throw lever. Let's make sure. Yep, we're all good there. So, okay. So we're mounted up. Everything is torqued properly. It's like our ring spacing is good and even. Look, we're all good there. So the last thing that I do is I go through, wipe off everything. Sometimes you get a little Loctite on the outside. No big deal. That's what that acetone or rubbing alcohol comes in handy. The last thing that I do, and the one thing that most people sometimes will cringe, but I'm telling you, it's the it'll save you a lot of heartache if you do it, is witness mark your screws. And what I do is I like these Sharpie pens, paint pens. You can use a regular Sharpie, but I like the paint pen. It seems to hold up a little bit better. Some guys use all kind of crazy colors. I use silver, so it's not too egregious. I've seen pink, I've seen blue, I've seen all kind out there. And what we're doing with this paint pen is we're going to make a witness mark on the screw, and then on the cap or the base, wherever it's connected to. And the reason why we're doing that is that if you're out in the field, you're at the range, all of a sudden your gun starts going a little wonky, you're like, shots are getting weird, you can instantly identify which screw is loose, if it is a loose screw. If those two witness marks are not lined up, then you can easily diagnose what's going on there. Save you a lot of time, a lot of heartache, a lot of headaches, and it gives you something to quickly look at before you head out to the range or head out to the field. Every time I take my guns out, they're witness marked. I check them all, make sure everything's lined up, and I know I'm good to go. And if something goes crazy, then I can at least eliminate that from the diagnosis there. So what I do is I come in. I don't get too crazy with it, but I just make a nice little mark on the screw, edge of the screw head, and then down a little bit onto the ring cap. So another little trick too is if you don't have Loctite or something in the field, you can actually use these paint pens or some fingernail polish around the screws, and it'll kind of do the same thing. And the good thing about this is, if you mess it up or whatever, you can use a little bit of that acetone or a little bit of paint thinner, and it'll come off. So those are marked. I'm also going to mark my base clamps here. Generally, if you Loctite these things properly, that's not an issue. But you know what? It's better to be safe than sorry. Okay. All right. So that's all good now. I'm going to put my cap back on. Okay, it's on 0. Now, since this is not my rifle, I'm going to let Chad do all the sight in and all that stuff. All right, last thing I want to do, take this off. And really you should do this with all your rifles, is you ought to really degrease and torque properly and Loctite your action screws. Okay, so this rifle has 2 action screws. They're gonna, since they're pillar bedded, they're 65 inch-pounds. So first off, we're gonna do is take them out. Let me get the right size. Okay, so this screw, we're gonna degrease it. Put it in a little alcohol bath there. Let that soak for a second. So we want to make sure and degrease the action screws as well, and the threads. So get that out of there. Generally, these action screws have a lot more oil on them. I mean, you can even see it right there than the spring screws do. Get that good and clean. Get it started. Switch over to our torque. We're gonna go to 65. Again, just what the manufacturer recommends. Most of these pillar bedded type guns are gonna be 60 to 65. If you got like a wood stock gun, it's gonna be less. All right, that's good. You'll wipe our excess there. Okay, let's grab this other one out. Oh yeah, this one's got a bunch of oil on it. Okay, we're all good there. Sure everything's cleaned off. Take out the old trusty paint pen. Witness mark these as well, so if something comes loose, you got a culprit. As your season runs on, you might need to touch up these. Sometimes they'll get a little worn from handling and everything, but you'll still be able to see them. Okay, so that's how I set up my rifles. Like I said, it's not the way, it's a way, and it's the way that's worked for me for years. The main takeaways are going to be is to make sure and degrease everything that the screw and the screw receptacle interface. That's a big thing. You want to get all that excess oil out of there. So anything that's going to touch the rings, it's going to touch the mounts, you want to make sure it's degreased. You also want to make sure everything is properly torqued and, in my opinion, Loctited. I like a blue Loctite. Don't go with the red. You won't be able to get it back off. You want to do that with your action screws as well. Make sure and check the manufacturer's torque specs to do it to the correct torque. Get a torque wrench. That's hand tightening. You'll never get them just right. They'll be inconsistent, and that can cause problems as well. So a little bit of prep time and a little bit of checking your work with the witness marking will go a long way to keeping you shooting straight in the field. So until next time, aim higher.